Good evening and welcome to the Let's Talk Destiny talk show. Tonight I am very excited to have with me one of my fellow sister writers and friends through via social media, Ms. TaRessa Stovall. Okay, I'm always messing up somebody's name. And I'm just really honored to have her with me because I've been connected with her through social media for a long time. She has been such an encouragement to me. I don't impress easily. Probably everybody that knows me knows that, but TaRessa is definitely a person who impresses and inspires me. And sometimes I don't even let her know that something she posted or said lifted me that day. But she has been a real blessing to me. So tonight I'm honored to welcome you to my platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamesina. Well, the feeling is completely mutual. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons we connected on social media is like minds and like spirits, and both being on there, especially, I mean, not just this year or last year, but we always have to strike the balance between the realities of our crazy world and the things that we can post, share, talk about that keep us going.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I feel that you and I are kindred spirits and that we're always working super hard to find and maintain that balance, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And even with regard to most people who are connected to me on social media are aware of my health challenges because I've made that a part of my journey to share with people. And you have even recommended and suggested some things along the way that have really helped me. And I genuinely appreciate that. And you will appreciate that. And tonight I want to talk about, for the month of December, well, for each month for the Let's Talk Destiny talk show, I try to come up with a theme for the month. Mm-hmm. And this month, I want to talk about the gift of purpose, because I find that a lot of people are flailing around trying to figure out what am I supposed to be doing. And that's one reason why they're so unhappy and miserable, because they don't know what it is that they were created to do, what they're supposed to be doing, how to find their purpose. And so tonight I want to talk to you about your purpose and your journey to this place where you are now. And first I want to begin by saying that TaRessa Stovall was born a jazz baby, I love that, in Seattle, Washington, when much of the country was racially segregated and her parents' marriage was illegal in 16 states. Her new memoir, SWIRL GIRL, Coming of Race in the US, reveals how she grew up as a bluish, she'll explain that more to you in a minute, Black power flower child, battling society and sometimes her closest loved ones to forge her identity on her own terms. I love that. She is an author from the age of 7. Talk about recognizing your purpose. And TaRessa has written and published poems, books, and plays on various topics, including racial identity and the impact of colorism on people of color. SWIRL GIRL is her 9th book. And we're going to talk more about that in a few minutes, because I read a lot of books, but this is one of the few books that left me speechless. Like when I finished reading, I was experiencing so many emotions, and I was feeling and seeing things I had never felt and seen before. And it really ministered to my soul. It really fed my soul. TaRessa is also an award-winning journalist, and she is a proud mother of a son and a daughter, and I love this part, who are both multi-talented writers and creatives, because if you know, a large part of what I do is to deal with mothers, and so that whole motherhood thing really blesses me. And so we're going to share more about how you can contact her and get more information from her about that later on. But I want to get into our conversation. First, I want to ask, how many books have you published?
I think 9.
Wow,
These
that's
are
awesome.
books that I've written by myself or written with other people, or a couple of anthologies, 3 that I contributed to and then also conceptualized and co-edited with
Okay.
Tracy Price Thompson. So it's a very eclectic kind of array of books that I've done. But yeah, I think it's 9.
Okay. Do you prefer writing fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, do I prefer writing fiction or nonfiction? I prefer the one I'm not writing at the moment. No, I'm just kidding. So they're both really different. Nonfiction is easier because you're working with information that exists, whereas with fiction, you have to literally create your story. You have to be God. And being God is a lot of work and kind of scary and often very intimidating.
Absolutely.
It's a lot, and it's a lot of work. So I think I love both of them. I love both of them. They use different writing muscles. Sometimes there's overlap.
Yeah.
But I think, my memoir was by far the hardest thing I've ever written. I am not a natural memoirist. I think some people are, especially people who journal and write a lot of nonfiction essays. I can't journal. But so it took me a long time to write my memoir, even though it's a short book. And the whole time I wrote it, I was like, let me just finish this so I can go back to fiction. So that grass is greener, right? Because the memoir was really, really hard. I had never, it was just really hard to do for me. And so it stretched me and it pushed me and it challenged me, took me out of my comfort zones a lot of times. So I was like, let me just go back to fiction. Now I go back to fiction and I'm still biting my nails and tearing my hair out. So I, I think that's just the nature of the beast, maybe.
Yeah. And that's interesting to me because I am the total opposite. Like, I have been writing a novel since Jesus was a baby, I think. And I started a children's book like 10 years ago that I haven't finished. But if I were to sit down and write something about me, I can just go ahead and knock it out about, like you said, my life experience. But when it comes to fiction, I am just having the hardest time. Like, oh my goodness, that is just, wow. So,
It's a lot.
and a lot of people that know me personally have a hard time believing that because I talk so much, and they say you don't appear to have a problem with dialogue. So, what is the issue? And I think for me, the issue is I'm always stopping and correcting and stopping and thinking, oh, that doesn't sound right, and like instead of just writing. Yeah.
So pro tip on that, if that's what's making it slow for you, is don't do it. Listen, so I'll share. Have you read the classic book Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott?
You know what I
Okay,
mean?
I want you to write it down. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll give you the punchline, but it's worth a read anyway. She's very witty, incisive, funny, and supportive writer. A white woman with blonde dreadlocks, but she's really quite interesting. The takeaway of the book, can I curse?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm quoting her. Is
You
that
obviously you didn't watch my interview with Tina McElroy-Anza.
I watched part, but I didn't watch it.
Oh
Okay.
my God.
So,
I was like,
Tina, that's right. That's right. So, okay. So, but what Anne Lamott really promotes, she does, you could just Google shitty first draft.
okay.
And what she reminds me is, and as many things as I've written, I'm having to remind myself of that right now with the work my work in progress, my novel, is the first draft is not supposed to be good. It's not supposed to be pretty, perfect, impressive, fabulous, poetic, eloquent. It's just to get it down. And then the real work begins, which is your rewrites, which most people don't want to hear.
Right.
But for 99.99% of us, the work, the magic is in the rewrites. Sparkle comes in the rewrites. I mean, you might have some good stuff in your draft, don't get me wrong, but the draft just gives you something to work on. So I'm really a big fan of Anne Lamott's promotion of the shitty first draft concept. And I have to remind myself of it like every day. It's even though I know and I've known for a long time. So that's a pro tip, is just to write it. And I know I'm with you on, here's what I do. When I'm starting a manuscript, I can't, especially in the beginning, I cannot resist the urge to, every time I open the document, I go, if not back to the beginning, the first 30 pages, I probably go back to the beginning and just re-edit and change, comma over here, different verb there.
Yes.
I let myself do that, Jamesina. I let myself do that till I get to probably page 40 or 50. And then I will let myself do it, you got to be disciplined, for maybe the preceding chapter.
Okay.
But not too long. Because after a while, if you really working on a manuscript and you're getting up to 150, 200, 225, 250 pages, that's your whole writing chunk of time.
Yes, yes.
And now you've written nothing new. So I would say it's like managing an addiction.
Yes, yes.
If you see how that works, and let me know, see how that works, or else just don't do it. And I know that's hard. I know I have the same, I have a Virgo rising. I want to go back and fix it. And I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and say, wait, I just thought of a better word.
Exactly. Yes.
So if you wake up at 3 in the morning with wait, I just thought of a better word, I would say go ahead and do that. The thing that's going to happen though is you're going to get in there at chapter 4 and go, oh, you're supposed to be writing chapter 12.
Right. And you're still here at chapter 4. Yeah.
But
that's what's going on.
But we all do that. We all do that. You are not alone.
Wow.
Not at all. Yeah. So please don't feel bad. But I mean, for me, it's like I'm always negotiating with myself, trying to manage my obsessions.
Awesome. And so I see, from reading your bio and from communicating with you on social media that you have a vast area of writing. Like you don't just write books, you've written for magazines, and so words are very important to you. And so when you say something, I pay close attention to it because I notice the words that you choose when you even post on social media, and they have meaning. It's not just like blah, blah, blah. Let me just put something up here. And I think that is very important. How do you feel about communication being a part of your life's work? Like, I just believe that that is something that you are called to do. How do you feel about that?
I agree. I agree. I have done many kinds of writing. All of the writings you talked about, which are usually my own writing. And then, for 40 plus years, I worked in what used to be called public relations. Then it became strategic communications, and I'm seeing other terminology now, but I'm out of the game. So I'm like, okay, marketing. So different kinds of writing. I am one of those people who the drive to communicate and communicate effectively to connect with people, as you and I've connected, is what is my purpose. And it's part of my purpose, and it drives everything I do. And just like your posts, your posts I don't scroll by, right? I read, I think. And so I think we recognize those people, right? Yes. Who, like you said, you choose your words carefully. By the way, your messages are super powerful, even when you're venting and ranting and really moving to me when you're sharing. And I want to thank you for sharing about your health journey, your healing journey, because I learned, and I think that's one of the gifts of social media. It has a lot of pitfalls, we know, but I think one of the gifts is I learn from you. I'm learning about an experience that I don't have, that I'm not privy to anywhere in my life. And yet I feel a strong connection with you. And when you write about it, post about it, I stop and I pay attention. I go, okay. I don't know what this is like. I'm not going to insult Jamesina by pretending, but I'm learning. And I really believe we're all here to learn. We talk about purpose. We're all here to learn and then turn around and teach somebody what we learned. So I always feel nourished and nurtured and I feel growth when I interact with you. And so you're welcome. And so I think that being transparent and sharing the vulnerability is also kind of your superpower. So that's how it feels to me, is like, okay, this level of transparency. Before social media, we really couldn't have that easily, certainly not with people we don't even know around the world.
Exactly.
And, different age groups, generations, races, ethnicities, etc. So I think that's part of, so communicating, yes, here for it, absolutely.
Awesome, I love it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your book. Your memoir, I should say, SWIRL Girl, Coming of Race in the USA. Now, what exactly prompted you to write this book, and what do you want to make sure that we understand when we read this book?
Great questions. Thank you. So I'm going to start with your theme for the Night of Purpose. So what prompted me to write this book is kind of sprinkled out over a few decades. But when I was young, I always, so I'm bluish, Black and Jewish. And I just found out from my brother. I always knew there was some Native American in there, but I didn't really know what. But then I found out that's Blackfoot Sioux. So I don't know, that doesn't go into the bluish, or maybe it does. But anyway, I'm like, do I have to now extend my word? But anyhow, so mixed race. And I'm always born, I'm a boomer, born in the 1950s. And so I've always had a strong sense of identity. The book is partially to share how my identity developed. It's not really about any other aspect of my life and much at all. The purpose is interesting. So number one, what seed of purpose was planted when I was young, and I'm from Seattle, and in Seattle, even back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, before Loving versus Virginia, there were a lot of mixed families, a lot of mixed kids. And I would see younger mixed kids, and I had this, I didn't know how or when or why it was going to happen, but I had a really strong urge to communicate with them about my journey, thinking maybe it could help illuminate their journeys, their identity journeys. That was seed number one. The other seeds were throughout the years, different people would say to me, it was kind of a funny statement, but different people would say in different ways that they had never met a mixed person like me, and I needed to explain to the world how I turned out the way I did. I was like, okay, I don't know what you mean, but I kind of knew what they meant, but I didn't realize I was different at all. Another seed was one of my professor mentors, Dr. Joy Hardiman. I wanted to write this book when I was 23 years old. I was clearly not ready. It took another 4 decades, but I wanted to write it, and I was telling her about it. She said, well, you can't write when you're going through something.
Wow.
Like you can't write about the tunnel when you're in the tunnel, right? But you will write the book someday, and you will, and she gave me like a log line, like a premise. She said, you will write the story, for colored girls was real big then. This was the 60s, 70s, 1976-ish, 77. She said, you will write the story of how a colored girl becomes a Black woman while always honoring her Jewish ancestry.
Wow.
So that, she gave me that. That was a big old seed. Okay, the next big seed was in November 2008, when Barack Obama was first elected president, and it was his first, or one of his first press appearances, and it was an unofficial, conversation.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how he and First Lady Michelle Obama, forever First Lady Michelle Obama, had promised their then very young daughters that if they won, they could get a dog. And this was, I think, one of his first press conferences. So people all around the world were ecstatic and hanging on every word and everything. And he explained that, I think it was Malia has a dog allergy, so they couldn't get a shelter dog. They had to get buy a breed, Labradoodle or something that didn't shed. And then he just casually, I was watching this 11 o'clock news. My kids, who were then teenagers, were in bed. I was sweeping the kitchen floor around our dog. And he says, well, shelter dog, and they're much like me. And I just stopped, and I was like, wow. Wait, hold up. Did this Negro?
Yeah. He just say that. Yeah.
And this wasn't a YouTube video I could rewind. This was the 11 o'clock news live in 2008, right? And I literally, the broom dropped to the floor, the dirt scattered, the dog jumped up. And in that moment, it was like a lightning strike from my ancestors. And I was working on, like all of us, Jamesina, a ton of other projects.
Yeah.
And I was starting a business with some friends, and I had invested in it and everything. And my ancestors were like, that's real nice, baby girl, but you finna write this book. That was 2008.
Wow.
I was like, okay, maybe. And again, I went back and forth for about another 6, 7 years. And then it just kept, it wouldn't go away, right? It wouldn't go away. I hadn't written a book in a while, hadn't published a book in a while, had a lot of ideas. But by now it was in the hands of my ancestors with whom I commune regularly, and they were not letting me go. They were like, you're not doing another thing, ma'am. And they were strict. Like I had a full-time job. I'd come home, sometimes I'd be chilling, you know, watching the TV or whatever. And they'd be like, excuse me,
You should be working.
this book will not be writing itself, ma'am. You would turn off. I'd be like, what
Um,
you looking around? Right?
yes.
Like, really? They're like, oh yeah, no, we're serious. So they actually, I tell people, in the end, it was a non-negotiable this time from my ancestors. So, but all those things were purpose. All those things were what you're talking about. This,
that's right.
the purpose of wanting. And so the reaction you had, and thank you so much for sharing that, is the reaction I wanted people to have, that I wanted it, if I was just hoping and praying the whole time, if there's any way people could read it and it could enlarge their perception a little bit. That's
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I remember several passages I read where I literally had to put the book down and just sit with that for a moment. Like, and I have this really bad habit, I'm gonna be honest with you. I read like 3 or 4 books at a time. Like, I have a book in the living room, a book in the bathroom, a book, and then I catch myself like speed reading. I'm like, look, just put this book down because you don't even know what you just read. But when I was reading your book, I literally had moments where I would sit the book down and just close my eyes and sit in that moment. Like, I could feel it. I could relate. And not because I'm mixed race, not that I know of anyway. Of course, I do know I do have some Indian in me, but I just, like, there was so much emotion. You did such an awesome job with the imagery, the word usage. Like, I felt like I was right there. And I was concerned about, and I wanted to talk to you about this, when you recognize that, or you acknowledge or accept the fact that you are of mixed race, did you find yourself more comfortable with one race than the other? Were you accepted by one race more so than the other, or were you just fine knowing that you were somewhere in the middle?
Great question. I've always known that I was mixed, so I was never uncertain about it, or, you know. I've also never really been rejected. And I say that a little carefully because apparently nowadays that's way more common than it used to be. I grew up in a very, Seattle. So Seattle's a very white place overall, but I grew up in the pre-gentrified, very Black, but Black also included mixed and also included Asian, various people from Asian American immigrants and their children. So it was a very diverse, multicultural environment. And I think that made a big difference. I never felt rejected. I have always leaned and just organically been Black. So Black identified, right? It was never, and I apparently, now that I am in contact with many more mixed race people online and in person, apparently that's unusual. I thought I was normal. I'm not. But and I was never rejected. In fact, for me, sometimes it felt like the opposite. Like I think I said I felt like a tug, sometimes like the rope in a tug of war. Come over here, we want you. No, come over here, we want you. Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't think white people ever as a group said, come over here, we want you. White people never seemed as a group, never seemed very concerned about my identity. Okay, Black people, and this is a generalization, but this is for the most part, seemed interested and concerned and very, very welcoming and sometimes possessive. Okay, so welcoming, possessive, but because that was my natural inclination anyway, there was never any conflict or stress or negativity. It was always like, yeah, this is great. So yeah, I never had that experience of feeling rejected. I never had an experience. I don't look at the world through a split lens.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask you that question.
Yeah, no. I mean, you look at the way I look at it, and that doesn't make sense for a lot of people, right? Like, how could you be black? Well, it is what it is. But also, I think there's been a shift, and I'm just now figuring out how to talk and write about that. So I'll keep you posted. But in the way mixed Black people in particular are received in Black places. But the reality is that mixed Black in particular, because there's different kind of mixes that don't include Black, but mixed Black, I think, in this country is always going to get the most attention because the country's built on an anti-Black binary. So
exactly,
you can't act like we're all equal in this environment,
exactly.
Right? So the Black people in general, and remembering, I grew up during segregation, right?
Right.
So even though in the North there was still de facto segregation, and so what a lot of young Black and mixed Black people now very condescendingly refer to as the one drop rule. It wasn't so much a rule as it was a political reality that if you were Black in any kind of way, unless it absolutely nobody could discern that, then you were Black. I mean, this wasn't Brazil with 32 categories between Black and white.
That's right.
Okay, you were Black, and I don't know that it's changed, so it's really interesting to watch some conversations. But in whiteness, to me, and I think I put this in the book, was always defined by the notion of purity and exclusivity. So if you had anything discernibly not white in you, you weren't white. I mean, you could, now they have terms like white passing, white adjacent, white presenting. That's all cute. But I still question whether the foundational dynamic has actually changed. The system hasn't changed. And so, my thing is, if white people don't accept you as white,
right,
with no qualifications, then I don't know where you're going, but you ain't white.
That's correct. That is correct. And I totally agree, because it's like you try to tell people, perpetuate pride in who you are, but at the same time, you have to accept that diversity is just a part of this culture, is a part of our country. But the reality is that some of us will never be accepted. And it kind of irritates me to hear people say, there is no racism in this country, everybody's the same. I'm like thinking, where do you live? Like, what planet are you on? Like, and then every so many weeks or so, I used to say years, but every so many weeks, something happens and comes to the forefront of the news where it's proven that we're very much still separated. And there is, like you say, if you don't look a certain way, if you don't speak a certain way, you can hide it all you want to, or you can think you're hiding it, that there's a drop of Black in your blood, but once it comes out, you are treated differently. That's just the way it is. And so I often wonder about people in your situation. One of the things that drew me to your story was that you had so much pride in who you were. You didn't feel the need to, yes, I'm Jewish, but I don't want anybody to know. Or yes, I'm Black, but I don't want anybody to know. I remember the story where you did the Afro, put your hair in the Afro. I remember the little girls were like picking on you, making fun of you, and the guy that was attracted to you or whatever, and then he found out that you had Black in you. It's like, seriously, like, whatever happened to just accepting people? Well, I guess that's never been a reality in this country. I was going to say, I don't even know where I was going. We're still trying to get there. We're still trying to get there. I don't know where I was going with that, because I don't think that's ever been our reality, and I don't think it ever will be. So as you prepare for your next literary gem that I know is coming, what specific things do you want us to be prepared for? Like you said, this particular book, you were guided by a previous, I think you said a professor, and your ancestors to share your story, because people need to hear it. Because realistically, there are not a lot of people who have pride in being mixed race. They say it, you know, like, I don't care what anybody says, I'm proud, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes time to really stand up and say, yes, I'm mixed and I'm proud of both sides of whatever, not very many people do that. So I applaud you for that. So what is it that you want us to be prepared for in your next book?
That's a really good question.
I'm practicing. I'm trying to become,
you're good.
I'm trying to become a good interviewer.
More explanation, more explorations, fictional explanations of mixed race identity and the ways that it intersects with what's going on in the world today. But fiction, so I can play. I'm not, you know, I don't have to just tell my story. I can make things up, which is awesome. So I'm intrigued when it comes to fiction, drama. I'm always intrigued by kind of the current things we're grappling with. You know, I'm one of those, like, I'm a David E. Kelley fan. I like writers who, you know what I mean? They take the current things we're grappling with and they kind of play with those in fiction.
Yes.
And I don't see a lot of that with mixed race stories. We don't have a lot of mixed race stories, but the few you do see, I don't see a lot of looking at, you know, what's going on in the world and then just like, well, you know, as you know, what drives fiction is the ultimate what if.
Right.
What if somebody, how would this work if somebody did that? So I'm playing with that big time. That's all I'll tell you, but I'm going to have you at the top of my list for when it's developed enough for me to share a little bit more detail.
Awesome. So what, last month I did, our theme was honoring our treasures, honoring our ancestors and our elders. That was our theme for last month. So I knew that is a very important part of who you are. And I think more and more I'm coming in contact with people who understand the importance of that. I think that we have been, well, I was raised in a very strict Christian home. And anything outside of saying that God spoke to me or God showed me or God, whatever, you know, it was almost sacrilegious. So for me to sit and say, I just heard my father speak to me on a day when I'm feeling really down or whatever, I can hear my mother singing a song or what, it comes across as, oh my God, you shouldn't be saying that, you shouldn't say that, which is one of the reasons why I'm always constantly being ostracized by religious mindsets, and I'm okay with it. You know, really, I'm not upset at all. And it's one of the things that drew me to you, because you reminded me that it's okay to feel what I feel and to experience. These people have paved a path for us. I mean, they have gone through some struggles that, thank God, or whatever, we will never have to go through. How can we not honor them? How can we not remember? You know, we hear a lot of negative stories about slavery and about, you know, this and that and the other, but there are so many positive things that they left for us and that they paved ways for us. And those are the things that I am just honored to be able to share. So I know that is important to you as well. So I'm not going to hold you all night because I can talk once I get going.
That's
but
fine.
Just share with us how important that aspect of your being is.
Ancestry, right? So what's interesting is I believe many, if not most, indigenous spiritual and religious traditions of people of color around the world seem to really center on ancestry, right? On honoring your ancestors. And so in a spiritual path, religious path, none of us would be who and where or why we are, regardless of without our ancestors, period. And that can be a hard depending on your identity and the identities and journeys of your particular ancestors. And we know this, especially as African Americans and diasporic people, that it's like, you know, I know a lot of Black, white, biracial people who really struggle with the white part, right? And I'm like, well, what I learned through my teachers and mentors is when engaging with and honoring your ancestors, you don't, first of all, we're their children. It is not for us to like or approve of their journeys. It's for us to understand whatever we can about their journeys, because without those journeys as they actually happen, we would not be here.
That's right.
The good, the bad, the ugly, the horrible, the tragic, the traumatic, the screwed up, including Massa, right? We wouldn't be here,
right,
as we are, where we are, why we are, who we are. So it's not like a popularity thing, or like, yes, I approve of, and you know, like I had a very, to put it mildly, difficult father. My father and I, we made peace before he passed, but I've spent the last 30 years working with him on the ancestral level, so we're much better. So the healing continues, and that's another thing. We had a very tumultuous relationship, so you know, I knew we had a lot of healing and karmic work to do. So that continues. It's an active part of every day for me. I would say that for everybody to just appreciate, though, you have to learn whatever you can about your ancestors and appreciate their whatever you know, whatever you can find out about their lives and their journeys. Because again, that's what makes you you. It's not just a DNA that you can, you know, send in a swab or some spit and get tested. That's fabulous.
That's right.
No, but that doesn't give you the journey. That doesn't give you the essence of the destiny.
Yes, ma'am.
Because that informs our destiny. That's who, you know, that's how we got here. So you don't have to like it. You can absolutely hate it or feel horrified or want to reject it or be disgusted by it. But my loving, warm suggestion is, as much as possible, try to at least understand it and appreciate it, because that's where your lessons are.
Yes, ma'am. I love that response. I love it. Well, wow. Again, you've given me a lot to think about, and I really, really appreciate it. Now, before we go, I would like for you to tell us, give us information on how we can contact you, how we can stay in touch with you. And I'm also going to post your contact information on the YouTube video as well. But I know that there will be people who will listen to what you have to say tonight that will be drawn to you. We'll definitely want to stay in touch. I have learned, and I'm going to say this in honesty, I'm going to let you go. I have, when I first came up with the concept of doing this talk show, I mentioned it to my sons and to my sister. And I was like, I really would like to do a talk show. And they were like, seriously? And I said, yeah. And so then they were like, go ahead and write down, you know, what you want the format to be, my format is a purpose-driven format. So I wrote that down. And then I made the mistake. Okay, I don't know if it was a mistake, but I started watching some other people's shows that I know. And I started thinking, okay, I'm not ready. I can't do that. I don't have this. I don't have that. And my oldest son, who happens to be incarcerated at this time, and my greatest supporter, like he just speaks life into me every time I talk to him. And he says, Mom, the things that you are fretting about are irrelevant, because you're talking to me about banners and lights, and you want to have high tech, you know, this. He said, but when people tune in, they're going to tune in for content and not tuning in for the cosmetics. So you just have to make sure that you're bringing people things that they want to hear that will bless their lives. So I said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. And the other reason I wanted to do this, TaRessa, is because I had my first spinal fusion surgery in 2013, and vertebrae in my neck cracked and caused me to have a stroke. And so the doctor went in, put in a the metal plate and whatever, so that your spine can fuse together. For whatever reason, it didn't work. So when I came out of the surgery, my whole left side was paralyzed and I couldn't talk. And I ended up in a nursing home rehab center, and they told me I may not ever be able to speak clearly again. And so that was difficult to deal with. And it was only like a year after my parents had died. My parents passed 3 months apart. So it was a very stressful time. So anyway, I go to the rehab center, I have to learn to walk again and go through speech therapy or whatever. But as I'm healing in certain areas, my neck pain is getting worse. 3 months later, they do an MRI and find out one of the screws had come out of the plate in my neck, and the plate was twisted. So the fusion was not occurring because the plate wasn't in place. So the surgeon says to me, I don't even know how you're still walking around and talking, because like literally your neck is not being held together properly. So I was not even allowed to go back home from his office. I had to go back straight to the hospital for my second surgery. This time he nicked my jugular vein, and a 2.5-hour procedure went for 10 hours. And they said that they lost me twice on the table because they couldn't stop the bleeding. So when I think of all of these things, and even to this day, I still have nerve damage that, I've not been without pain since 2013 because of the nerve damage. But the fact that I can talk and people can hear me is another reason why I wanted to do this show. And I call it my humble beginnings, because I have dreams for it to be much larger. But when people such as yourself agree to join me on this platform, it really it touches my soul, because I questioned for a long time my purpose and if I would still be able to touch anybody after all of this has happened. And so when people say to me, you said something that made me laugh, or the way you explained something really helped me, whatever, it means more to me than I really know how to verbalize. And having you here tonight and feeling that soul connection means more to me than I can even explain to you. So I did not want you to leave without me expressing to you how honored I am to have you here tonight.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to be here. And by the way, I completely agree with your son, and prayers up for him and for you. I completely agree with your son, and it's so interesting. I am with you. Backdrops, whatever, right? But you know what? He's right, and you are just, first of all, the camera loves you. You're gorgeous.
Oh my.
And you're really good at this. I'm serious.
Thank you.
Just delightful, and you're right. And I think especially younger people can remind us of that with our generation. We're like, it has to be perfect, and I have to go to the hairdresser, and I need a makeup artist. And pandemic has shot all that out. But anyway, I'm in the bathroom like help. But anyway, so to remember that, especially younger folks, and I think older folks too, I would love to see more videos with you. Like, we want authenticity. We want to feel a connection. I don't care what's in back of you. Your lighting is fine, by the way.
Thank you.
Your lighting is fine. I'm serious. It seems counterintuitive, but your son's right. And I want to just encourage you to keep doing this. And I'm going to brag about you. I'm super honored to be here with you, and to keep our connection going. But I really want to encourage you to keep doing this as much as you can, so that, because you talk about purpose, and you just described, I know, just a very small part of your health journey and struggles, right? And, they talk about a test and a testimony, and that's definitely you. But I think too that you are, I believe we're all here to heal. And in our healing, whoever we can manage to reach and touch, that maybe we can contribute to their healing. I know you contribute to mine. And I believe you contribute to a lot of people's feelings. The other thing is that you are funny as hell.
Thank
You
you.
are hilarious. I hope you know, I know you know that. I'm like, just why is she
Yeah,
not doing
people have
stand-up?
said to me, you should do stand-up. Like,
You totally,
I
you
have
should
some
really, you really
people in
could.
this area have, had a club, and they would do, like, I think once a month they would have people come in and they would tell me, you should come. And I'm like, first of all, I don't think I'm funny. Like, when I say something and people laugh, then I'm thinking, why are they laughing? My sister said I have this Bob Hope sense of humor, like it's dry and like,
Yes,
so I don't
very
think
dry.
realize what I said is funny until somebody else laughs. I'm like, who can get on the stage and do that? Because then I don't know if people are going to laugh or not.
I don't know, but I'm just saying, I've thought that, like many of your other people have thought that for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
So you have many gifts and a lot of beauty and a lot of power, and your story is very, very relevant. I think it's not only relevant, it's relatable. So just please know that relatability, I think, ends up being the currency that drives this baby, right? I think that people say, like I said, I don't know the neck and the shoulder and the things you're describing, but when you describe them the way that you describe them, they're relatable.
Yes, ma'am.
And there's something magical about that, isn't there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So please keep doing it, and you will get big. And I mean, we can all be our own little Oprah or Tabitha Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
I have, right? I'm like, I still remember when a girlfriend told me about her. It feels like it was just a year and a half ago when she got really famous doing the carrot bacon thing, whatever that was.
Yes, yes. And you just never dreamed that she would blow up like this. Like,
but people, and I'm sure that most of the people following her aren't necessarily vegan.
yeah,
You
right,
know,
right.
buying her book. Now she's got TV shows.
Yes.
That what she sold is warmth at a time when we all needed it.
Yes.
She's very sincere and genuine in her presentation. And she has this very uplifting, but at the same time calming auntie presence.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So she just gave the world a gift at the time when the world was ready to receive it, and when the world desperately needed something that felt calming and soothing and uplifting. And
yes.
So I think that you're kind of in that category as well.
So much. Wow. I just appreciate you so much.
Appreciate you too. And let's talk again soon. And thank you. Blessings. And happy holiday to you and yours, and to everyone listening and watching.
Same to you, and be safe out there.
Oh, baby, you too. Mask up.
I know that's right. Love you.
Love you too. Thank you so much, sis. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.